Hello, my Degens. How we doing? Welcome to Dynasty Degens on the Dynatized Network. I'm Nerdboi. As always, joined by my man Birdman below me. How you doing, Chris? What's going on, brother?
Living the dream, buddy. This is
Nice.
great time to be alive. Football life is in full force right now. Kids football practice earlier. We got our first game this weekend. And I'm in the middle of my big 16-man draft as well. So
yeah, man, we got
it's
a week
football
out.
life. I'm living.
Being a week out, I figure we're going to talk wide receivers. We're going to get through the whole gambit of wide receivers, talk about every round that you're going to hit, the value, the guys that you're talking about, and then pretty much go through the motions and talk a little bit about why we're going to pick these guys and why we think they're the right guy for the rounds. No better person to talk that through with, my boy Zain. Zain, welcome to the show, man. How you doing over there?
What's up? Thanks for reaching out. No, I'm good. I mean, I'm just in the void. That's what they call it. I'm just this guy, like floating head, basically. So, no, it's been great, man. I'm excited for real football to start. We've got one of our last preseason games for two teams today, and man, there's just a ton of news and notes to come, especially for dynasty managers, because this is when we start grinding like the end of roster players, right? Like we think about our top players, and then there's guys like Skylar Bell playing right now, and it's like, well, could he be the wide receiver 3 after 5 or 6 weeks into the season for the Bills? So yeah, I'm excited, man. This is a fun time to get into.
It's kind of like where you get your clarity, at least from the beginning, where these depth charts kind of play out a little bit, and you get to actually look at these guys that are on the bubble or on the cusp of just staying on a dynasty roster in general. And sometimes like a Skylar Bell will flash and you'll be like, all right, well, we got something cooking right here. Like I said, we're going to be talking about wide receivers today. And Zain, you've been all over the place, man. I don't know if you've covered wide receivers recently. I know that you've been all over the pods. I saw you make a couple appearances. You were with my boy Cups actually a couple days ago. I got Cups on tomorrow, 2 days from now. I think Saturday this week. Actually, we're gonna do best ball. So let's have a little fun with it, man. Let's talk a little bit about. Before we get into it, though, I gotta pick your brain. I was like, if Zain's coming on here, you're always in the know. You're always on it. You're grinding film a little bit. You're looking at everything in the off season. Do you buy the hype if we're talking about wide receivers on a Cyrus Allen? Or, like as far as like a Cyrus Allen goes in a dynasty league, are you thinking that he's going to be a relevant player?
I think that's a good question. So like, I feel like if Cyrus Allen was on like the Jaguars or something, I wouldn't feel the same way I feel about him on this Chiefs team, because he wasn't going to get many reps on a team like the Jaguars. But it's just the mix of this team doesn't have very, very much depth at receiver. Their wide receiver 3 position is a guy who, Tyquan Thornton hasn't really done much in the NFL. Looked decent last year with Mahomes, but there's technically an opportunity there to earn that opportunity over a guy like Tyquan Thornton. And then Xavier Worthy's been missing from practice most of training camp. Rashee Rice coming back from the knee. I think that there's just like a window of opportunity where he could actually step in and do stuff. And the funny thing is, like, the Kansas City beat writers and such have said this is probably their best man coverage beater, which is insane for a rookie like Cyrus Allen, and what you would expect from a team that has Super Bowl aspirations. But that's just the nature of what their wide receiver room looks like right now. He's made a ton of plays in practice. There's a way he could get on the field is kind of the main thing that I'm thinking through. And if he gets on the field, then we just leave it up to chance and see, like, hey, you're connected to Patrick Mahomes, and there's been some good, strong reports about you and stuff. So let's just see what happens. So I think he's worth like rostering and taking chances on, because you never know. You really don't know.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, it's the Pukas, and everyone wants to point at these late round wide receivers that nobody really valued up until the offseason. There are these guys that shine. You do have to take it seriously. And you're right, situationally, it does look good. We're talking about Stribling as well in this little category. I know that he got the DC. He was a little favored, and he's in a really good situation over in the 49ers. Do you feel the same way as far as he goes, or do you have like a different take as far as his outlook in player value for yourself.
Yeah, this is another one where it's like situation based, right? I wasn't a big believer in his talent coming out of college, but the way that they're talking about using him is like the few things that he was actually pretty good at. Like, let's do some underneath stuff, get him in space, and create some create some yak. And like, if you look at his profile coming out of college, that's the only thing that was really that strong about his profile was like the yards after the catch ability, and obviously athleticism, right? So I like the fact that they're thinking about him in that way because, you know, it's a Shanahan scheme. We've seen what they've done with a guy like Deebo Samuel, who was able to create a bunch of stuff underneath. Deebo never had like strong separation grades. Like he wasn't a guy that was like, oh, you're going to go out there and run man coverage and beat a bunch of dudes and like get the ball. Even when he was producing a lot in fantasy, it was a lot of manufactured type of stuff underneath and then taking it the distance. If you have a dynamic athlete in that situation, with the creativity of a guy like Kyle Shanahan designing plays, and putting people in positions, I think you could get fantasy success. Like that's the thing. Like to me, we've seen guys like Kendrick Bourne and Demarcus Robinson have big like spike weeks in the past too. So it's like, yeah, of course you take a chance on this guy, and then we've actually seen it with the preseason game film. Like I did a review of it last Friday. I posted a bunch of clips of Deshaun Stribling actually like beating guys in coverage, like getting open, getting the trust of Brock Purdy on third downs. I mean, they didn't have any other receivers out there that were as notable as him, but it still means something. I think those reps mean a lot.
Yeah, and then we're actually, I mean, when we break it down from a team perspective, they don't really necessarily have any wide receiver, even when fully healthy and fully employing. Obviously, we know Ricky Pearsall's out for the year, and George Kittle is coming back, and he is probably going to play week 1, but we still don't know how he's going to be ramping up from injury. Nobody really moves me in this offense to the point where I'm going to say, what I'm seeing from him in the offseason can't translate into an NFL game, given the fact that they are banged up. I know that, Mike Evans is over there, but he still has an injury right now. And he is, at an age where obviously there is concern there for re-injury and just, father time catching up in that scenario. So I'm in on this guy. I think I was definitely, screaming this from the rooftops where he was just falling into this right spot, and the writing was on the wall when they didn't take anybody else in that draft. I think that they were pretty set in stone as far as this guy being at least the one that they want to showcase and see if he fits for the system. But let's get to it, boys. Let's do this. We're going round to round. So essentially what we're going to be doing is I'm going to drop these names. I'm going to go guy to guy, and then essentially we're just going to go through it. We're going to talk about who we prefer in this round. We're going to slowly go down the tiers, discuss it a little bit, and just go through the motions and really just try to pick the right guy for each round right here. So let's start with you, Zain. And let's I got a clear-cut guy right here. I think I feel good about this. This can be a dynasty take. This can be for this year, short-term, long-term. If you want to get into both sides, it's all good. If you have a different answer for each dynasty, redraft, whatever, go for it. But I'm talking Ladd McConkey, Carnell Tate, or Chris Olave. Who are you tapping in this range? And give me the reasons why.
So I'd have to go with Ladd. I will admit that I'm a little bit worried about him longer term, and the reason why is because I like his situation this year with Mike McDaniel, but I don't know that Mike McDaniel is going to be there longer than 1 year, and so that's like the real concern with him. They are talking about using him in ways similar to how they use Tyreek Hill. Obviously, not the level of talent of Tyreek Hill, right? But what that really means in terms of role is we're going to continually design ways to get him pretty much wide open and then let him cook in space. And I mean, obviously Tyreek Hill is the most dynamic when it comes to that we've probably seen in a long time, like him, Antonio Brown, guys like that we've seen. But Ladd's also a really strong athlete. I mean, I think that they're going to get him in space a lot and find ways to get him the ball. And that, to me, that's huge. Now, long term, I'd probably still go with Ladd because I still think that there's a way for Chris Olave to, I think Jordan Tyson could end up being a better receiver in terms of in terms of like being more consistent for fantasy, given the role differences that I see with Chris Olave versus what Jordan Tyson's going to be asked to do, being more like underneath intermediate versus Olave being more intermediate to deep. And so just like the consistency level that we'll see, we did see Olave do some more like 3-level stuff last year, but the addition of, that's when they didn't really have anything else. The addition of Jordan Tyson is going to make that person make him kind of shoot a little bit longer, which is what he's done in other times in his career too, which he's been more of like a quote unquote deep threat, but like a super deep threat. If you want to, if you know what I mean, like a guy that can do more than that, but is asked to do that more often than you'd probably want from a fantasy perspective. And then Carnell Tate, he's in a really bad situation. That's the problem. And you never know how long that's going to last, right? We don't know if Cam Ward's going to get better like next year or throughout the course of this season. The offensive line is pretty bad, which I think is going to limit his potential for this season. I did like Carnell Tate quite a bit coming out of college, but he is a guy that was thriving with explosive plays. And I don't know that those explosive plays are going to follow him to the NFL this season because of the limitations of the offensive line and Cam Ward. I just don't know that those plays are going to be there. And then long term, again, we don't know if they're going to keep the same coaching staff around. We don't know like what the quarterback situation, offensive line situation is going to look like. So I have concerns about him.
Yeah. Chris, where do you stand on this? Where are you going? I think that I know where you're going to go right here, but you disagree, agree with Zain on this?
Somewhat. I mean, I am leaning Chris Olave of these three for sure. Whether even if it's dynasty or redraft, I would be going Chris Olave with these three. Carnell Tate, it's not about just the preseason and what's gone on. He hasn't caught a ball yet, but that doesn't mean much. I mean, it's preseason. Olave with Tyson's injury, I mean, that just opens the floodgates for him to just dominate the target share down in New Orleans. I mean, who do we have left there? It's Juwan Johnson, right? Juwan Johnson, yes, he was third in the league in receiving yards for tight ends last year. So I know that is probably a surprise to many people. So yeah, go ahead and move Juwan Johnson up your boards too. But Olave, I mean, what was he in targets last year? Top 6, top 7, somewhere in there, right? So I don't see how that drops any, right? I mean, we got Tyler Shook, a young quarterback. He's going to still lean on the guy who helped him have a pretty successful rookie season at the end of the year last year. Ladd McConkey, I don't know what else I can say. I've said it over the last few weeks, the last month. I don't know how I can say that he's going to outscore Quentin Johnston definitively this year. That's pretty much as simple as
he's had this take where you're going to take Quentin Johnston and get the same production as you're going to get from Ladd McConkey. I admittedly, I cannot stand this take. It grosses me out. I'm not into it at all.
I'm not saying that Ladd McConkey is not a better wide receiver than Quentin Johnston. I'm just saying that's how the numbers will end up falling, somewhat similar in the same bucket. They're going to finish pretty close. Ladd McConkey might out yardage him by maybe 100 yards. I just don't see Ladd McConkey blowing up for 1,300 yards. That's my whole point. Like 1,000 yards. Yes, I do definitely think that McConkey's going to get there. Will he get 1,000 or 1,100 yards and Quentin Johnston only 900, 950? Sure, maybe. I just don't see him getting to the level of where Olave can get this year, which is 1,300 yards. I believe that. I'm much more confident in that right now. And as long as Carnell Tate has the question mark that is Cam Ward, we don't know. I mean, can Cam Ward make that step? Sure. But for now, my money would be on Tyler Shook and his arm, the way he's produced over last season and has the Kellen Moore offense. Like, I like Brian Dable, but, until I see it with my own eyes, I don't know for sure that Cam Ward is going to be, the guy. I think he'll be there for 4 years and we'll see what he does for Tennessee, but I don't know.
How much do you weigh? Because this is one thing that came into my head while you were talking about this. Like, I agree. I do think that Olave will outproduce Ladd for full season long. But I'm also like, hey, if Jordan Tyson comes back when it matters, do we think that he's going to outproduce Ladd in week like 15, 16, 17, the weeks that matter for like winning championships and such too? And I think it's like, we don't have like a guaranteed date of return for Jordan Tyson. So there's a huge question mark there.
Right. But isn't Quentin Johnson going to do just at least as much as Jordan Tyson? Like, we've already seen Quentin Johnson do something on the field. I don't know how we can bet on a rookie, Jordan Tyson, who's missing all of camp now, and now he's not going to play until November. Like, what is he really going to be come November? I do think he's a very talented player. I just don't know that that's going to eat into Olave. And, you know, we're betting on Ladd McConkey here, who didn't even outscore Quentin Johnson last season. I think Ladd is a better all-around receiver. He's an amazing route runner. I get all that, but until he actually turns that into production, I don't like having to pay third or fourth round startup pick values for a guy who I haven't seen it on the field. I've seen it for the back half of his rookie season and into that one playoff game, right? He was amazing. Don't get me wrong. Olave has just done it for a longer period of time. So that's where I'm leaning Olave, I guess. I think the Chargers offense is going to be awesome this year. Yeah, I really hope they get 4,500 yards or more from Herbert. But there's a lot of talent around that offense too. Doesn't mean that's all going to Ladd.
No, I don't think it has to. Oh, go ahead, Zane.
I was just going to say, I think it's a great point. I think it's actually, to you, it's obviously not very close, but for me, it's like decently close to where like I can understand why you'd feel the way that you feel. I just think that I think the potential of what you could get with lightning in a bottle in this specific situation for Ladd could be really, really strong in this offense. But I also understand that, like, if you just look at the season-long stuff, I guarantee you there's a strong likelihood that Chris Olave will have, like, better season total stats because he's going to have, like, 6 to 8 weeks without anyone else out there, really, with him.
Right. And so if that's the case, then where are we going to be ranking Ladd McConkey next year, right? Is he actually still going to stay in the fourth round as a startup pick, or is he going to drop down to like, where Jalen Waddle is, or I don't know, T. Higgins? I mean, I guess Waddle would be a better example because he's actually the number one for his team. But I don't know. It scares me a little where Ladd could fall to. Dynasty value wise.
So what I think right here is I'm going to go Ladd McConkey as well in this tier. And I think that when you're looking at a player, I evaluate based on skill set, look at the offensive system, look at what they deployed last year. I don't necessarily translate the numbers from last year to this year and just say this is how it's going to be. Like Quentin Johnson outplayed, Ladd McConkey in the sense that he scored more fantasy points. When it's apples to oranges when you're talking about something like that, because Ladd McConkey just profiles as such a different wide receiver, and he plays a little bit of this, a little bit of that. He's all over the field. Quentin Johnston has that big play ability, but really he has nothing intermediate. He has nothing in the middle of the field. He's an outside, big play guy. And I agree that that's probably what they needed in the offense last year, especially when, Herbert was not protected very well and was just trying to get the ball out to the outside. I think that this is going to just have a completely different look this year. And I agree that it's hard to evaluate based on McDaniels essentially auditioning for a head coach position right now. I mean, I agree with Zain where he might not be here for a long time. So you might be looking at Ladd deployed in this system for a year and then almost changing up the ecosystem again for a third year in a row, which I don't necessarily love. But if we're talking about this year, I think that Ladd is set for a big time role with McDaniel. But then Chris Olave, he does have blood clots. He does have concussion issues. I mean, there's a lot of concern for Chris Olave. Last year was the only year that we really saw Olave produce like he did early on. Like we saw a couple of years where it was like touch and go, and it was really frustrating to have Olave on your team because a lot of times he would leave in the middle of he was like a T. Higgins, like inconsistent in and out, stuff like that. I'm not saying that just goes away. I'm not saying that it comes back either. There's a little more concern with Chris Olave being the only guy. I almost liked him more with Jordan Tyson coming in just because I think that would have actually helped Tyler Shuck develop. But like from an offensive standpoint, their offense was still not, it was bottom 10 last year. And I think that Tyson would have improved that offense. I don't know if they're still going to be a bottom 10 or if they're suddenly going to be a successful offensive system. I want to believe that they make jumps and they do that, but I've just seen it with McDaniel before. I've seen him come in and just deploy an offensive system that is successful in the NFL. I'm believing in that. Carnell Tate, to me, he's a boundary X. I haven't seen Cam Ward be able to throw. Like, he can't throw the pass that Carnell Tate needs. He's a boundary guy.
He doesn't have the time to either.
He doesn't have the time or his patience. He holds the ball a little too long. Everything is just not lining up to be Carnell Tate type of year for me. I think that there has to be some drastic changes. I think if they had a Lemon on that team, it would be a different story. But Carnell Tate requires somebody for, the deep ball or somebody that can actually just like let his routes develop. He's not like a screen guy. You're not going to get a big game out of Carnell Tate dumping off, chunk plays to him. He's got to he's got a good route tree. You got to let him just play it out. And Cam Ward's not able to get the ball out or actually have enough time for that to happen.
The funny thing is, like last year, we would have been having this conversation, and it would be like, well, I mean, Ladd as a rookie was like 1,100 to 1,200 yards, and Olave was coming off like an 800-yard season, which is now like the opposite of what happened. Olave basically had like the 1,200-yard season, and then Ladd has the 800-yard season. So I just think, we'll see how it plays out. I think that I don't think you'll go wrong with drafting either Olave or Ladd, personally. I do think you can go wrong by drafting Carnell Tate only because the situation doesn't seem promising, and then we don't have an end in sight.
Yeah, it's kind of like taking Tetaroa McMillan in this range, and I don't have him on this list, but he is in this range where he's attached to Bryce Young, and Bryce Young still is almost in that Cam Ward trajectory where we haven't seen him, be able to just like really get the ball out and have accuracy. And, we see him oversell or not necessarily get the ball out in time. His timing's out of whack. So he's another guy that I'm putting in that Carnell Tate bucket where it's not necessarily the player, but it is a situational thing. It's the quarterbacks. It's the offensive system. It's everything attached to it. It's too volatile for me to just say, I'm going to take him over, somebody that's attached to McDaniel or Chris Olave coming off of that 1,200-yard season. Let's keep it moving, though, boys. A good discourse. I'm loving it. I appreciate. I like when we don't agree on stuff. I want more of that.
It would have been awesome if you were into Carnell Tate, because then we would just be.
It would have been good.
No. We would have had to have Frankie on here for that.
Yeah, Frankie was. So we have a Debbie host, Frankie, that makes appearances every once in a while. And if you're over the age of 25, not interested.
Yeah,
like he is. You're already on the age cliff if you're in your third season. Like he's like, I'm good. I'm all set. So
yeah, Ladd is probably too old for him.
Yeah. I got a good one on deck. And actually, I think the changes in the Texans offense, and I'm starting with you, Chris. So we're talking Zay Flowers, Luther Burden, or Nico Collins. So once again, Zay Flowers, Luther Burden, or Nico Collins.
Zay, Burden, or Nico. All right, so this one's tough for me because I did just have Nico as one of my three keepers in a 16-man league. But if I had Zay Flowers, I definitely would have kept him over Nico Collins. And I'll tell you why. I just trust the offensive environment of Baltimore more. So even with a new offensive coordinator, I love Declan Doyle coming from the Bears environment with Ben Johnson. I think that there's a perfect skill set there in Baltimore for this offense to just hammer points out this year, with Henry just doing what he does. And then you've got Flowers with a couple of nice rookies. We all know Jacoby Lane is blowing up right now. I don't know if Surratt is going to get as many snaps as we hope, but we'll see how that plays out. And then you've got trusty old Mark Andrews there. And the key really is how well Lamar Jackson develops as a pocket passer. He's done well. He's got great accuracy for a running quarterback, probably one of the best, most accurate quarterbacks of the running quarterbacks we've seen over the last couple of decades, right? I mean, it goes back to probably Donovan McNabb as far as how good of a passer Lamar is when you're talking running quarterbacks. So I think he can develop and extend his career longer by doing that. I would go Zay Flowers here. Nico Collins, man, I mean, I'd still take him over Luther Burden, but man, that's close. Okay. Like if we're talking dynasty wise, because I know, Mike, you think I hate Luther Burden, but I don't hate him. It's just that I think he's overpriced in the 4th round. I'm in on him more in the 6th round, right? And Nico Collins is also overpriced for me in the 4th round of a dynasty startup. I don't see that offense being able to, step on the throat of an opponent with D'Amico Ryans running things there. They're up 21-10, and it's just going to be 10 handoffs to Monty in the 4th quarter. It's not going to be like it is in Cincinnati where Joe Burrow would still sling it, even though they have a Chase Brown back there that they could hand off to the whole 4th quarter. You know that Joe Burrow's still going to throw it a few times in that 4th quarter. So with CJ Stroud, though, I mean, his game plan is don't turn the ball over, okay, and hit your guys when they're open, all right? And so, yeah, Nico gets his big plays here and there, but he's not as consistent of an X wide receiver as you'd like, okay? Zay is going to get way more consistent targets. Luther Burden will probably get more consistent targets than Nico Collins in this Bears offense with Ben Johnson. But I'm going to rank Burden. I'm going to rank him just below. I think Nico Collins' big playability still gets him over the hump. Now, dynasty-wise, man, I'm having a real tough time between Burden and Collins. I don't know. Maybe Zane can convince me one way or the other there.
The funny thing is I have all 3 of them from a dynasty lens, like really close to each other. It's like,
yeah,
it's hard for me to discern the difference between all 3. That's how close it is. And right now I do have it Nico, Zay, and Luther, and they're all like within a top 20 for me, like dynasty ranks. And it's like the bottom, right? Like it's like 18, 19, 20.
Yeah.
But like when I'm testing this out, talking to you guys, I'm starting to change my mind, and I'm starting to feel like in 1 year, I have Luther Burden, who I think can just absolutely dominate this year. I have some sources that I talked to that are inside the Bears building, and they said this offense is basically designed to set him up for success. Like get him in yak situations, let him cook, do the Amon-Ra St. Brown stuff, and just do all of that. And that would be awesome because it's a really good use of his skill set, right? Like, not only that, like, we try to compare 2 players, and it's like, okay, he's not Amon-Ra St. Brown right now, but Amon-Ra St. Brown wasn't who he is for a couple years into his career. Yeah, he had great fantasy stats, but like he's not the same. He wasn't like a fully complete player, and we should assume the same thing from a guy like Luther Burden, that he's not the fully complete version of himself. But he is, I believe, 22 years old, has time to develop. He didn't miss that much time with this groin thing. He's already back in practice, and he like all offseason, the chatter is he was in the building every single day, looking for people to throw to him, run routes, work out, all sorts of stuff. Right? I heard the things that Ben Johnson said about him. Basically compared him to Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jarvis Landry. I think they're going to try to feed him the ball, and I want a piece of that. I really do. I think there's a lot of opportunity for Caleb to get better too. There's no concern about the coaching staff leaving or anything. It's like, no, Ben Johnson has the job he wants. He's the head coach, so we don't have to worry about the team change or anything. There's really only one direction for Caleb Williams to go, and it's up because his accuracy is pretty bad still. He was at like near the bottom of the league, and that's it's funny to say because Caleb was still like a good football player in like key moments last year, but he has a lot of room to improve, which I think can then elevate a guy like Burden. With Zay Flowers, I like the system that he's going into. Very clearly going to be the number one option. I do like I said, I like the Declan Doyle system. It's very similar to this Ben Johnson system that he's going to be deploying. The issue with me with him is that we don't know how long Lamar is going to stay with this team. One issue. There's just like a small complicating factor there, right? You want to make sure that Lamar sticks with him longer term. I do think it's likely that he stays there, but it's not 100% certain. And then I don't know, like part of me, we saw some drop off in Lamar, and obviously that can all be dictated by like situation last year, injuries, stuff like that. But you have to question it a little bit. Like there's a reason to question it a little bit because we saw it actually physically happen last year. So a little like slightly worried about those things, and that's enough to like have a tiebreaker broken for me. It's just like that small situation. And then going back to what you said with Nico, like I think all of that is apparent. I do think he's a really, really, really amazing football player. If he was in like Luther Burden's situation or in Zay Flowers' situation, I'd probably have him first. And again, I said these guys are like right next to each other in ranks. So it's splitting hairs, but yeah, I think his situation is the worst. So I'm just gonna go with Burden, then Zay, and then Nico.
Interesting. Yeah, I think that with these guys, I have them all very close, and that's how I kind of have to look at it is, long-term situation. What volatility is attached to this offense? What do we have to look at from a quarterback point of view? And I look at the Texans and I look at CJ Stroud and I say, this guy might not be on the team after this year. Like the reality of the situation is a lot worse than people are giving it credit for. I think that there is no extension on the table. They're not saying we need you right now. We want you as our franchise quarterback. There is a lot of concern there where, CJ Stroud, yeah, maybe he's bad for Nico Collins, but ultimately changing over a guy, we see it with the Dolphins. We see it all the time in the NFL where, you can subtract and not add even close to what you subtracted, at least short term. And Nico Collins is already 27 years old. He was a late bloomer. I think that he had the year 3 breakout that we were really hoping for early on with a lot of these wide receivers. But even then, we needed CJ Stroud to get to town for him to come out. And then now we're looking at him as a little banged up, injuries here and there, fully healthy. And in a perfect situation, it's Nico Collins for me. To the Zay Flowers talk where, if you follow me, you've seen my content, Zay Flowers is my guy. He's somebody that I'm very high on for this year. Luther Burden is in the same bucket, though, for me. I love both of these guys. I think that they both separate well. They both find a way to become the quarterback's best friends. And I think that that's exactly what we're going to see this year. I think that Zay Flowers and Luther Burden on separate teams are going to have a very similar role in the sense that they're going to be the safety blanket for the quarterback. They're going to be the guy that they go to all over the field. I think that you're going to see him lined up everywhere in the slot, on the outside, all that good stuff. You're going to see a myriad of situations where these guys are going to be played in and schemed up, and maybe out of the backfield. We've seen it from both these guys taking handoffs and, sweeps and all that good stuff. We're going to see all of it. I think that from a standpoint of quarterback play, it's still Lamar Jackson over Caleb for me. Pretty easily, actually, when we're talking about accuracy. And, Chris mentioned it, running quarterbacks don't really carry that. We haven't really seen these guys stretch out their careers because when they're rushing goes to the wayside, the accuracy, everything else is pretty much just like out in the open, and they don't have that safety blanket, so you can see like the inaccuracies and the tough throws and everything. It's more prevalent after that gets taken away. But with Lamar, he's actually made leaps and bounds when it comes to his passing, and I think that he is a very viable quarterback with his arm. I don't know if Caleb gets to that point this year. I don't know if we see him all of a sudden become an accurate guy. I know that Ben Johnson is to be trusted, and he can make, like he can shine up a turd and make it look beautiful. And I've seen him bring back quarterbacks like Jared Goff before Ben Johnson was what, I think that you can look at his dynasty value skyrocket from the year that he touched on Ben Johnson and then upwards of that. So it's possible. Anything is possible. But I think that from a standpoint here, I'm going to have to go Zay Flowers, Burden, and Nico Collins. I'm not buying in on the Nico Collins is all of a sudden going to go to the moon because of Jaden Higgins being out. I think that it is going to be a tough year for the Texans. I think it's going to be a lot of rushing. I think it's going to be up and down. I love Nico Collins. I just don't know if I can buy in on him being a consistent guy week to week. And that hurts me because I'm a day one Nico Collins guy. I really am. I'm all in on him, even from his rookie year. I said just to believe in Nico Collins, and I'm a non-believer nowadays, and I apologize to Nico Collins, I guess. Nobody cares, but Nico doesn't care either. I don't know why I'm apologizing to you, brother. But
so you want to know what the Dynatize rankings are right now?
Yeah,
Nico is 13th, Luther Burden 18th, and Zay Flowers 19th. I'm shocked, actually. I'm surprised.
That's consensus, and that's really how the boards have gone this year. For the most part, Nico's been first off the board, and then you're looking around, and then it's kind of a coin flip between Burden and Zay Flowers most of the time.
It's just ironic to me because we've had the Jaden Higgins injury, and yet Nico, here we are talking about him, and he's last in our minds pretty much. You know what I mean? Like even me, I've been down on Luther Burden this whole time, and all of a sudden I'm talking through it, and I'm like, well, I probably actually would prefer Burden or even Rome over Nico at this point, right? Because I have Burden and Rome like back to back.
I just think that you're looking at the higher ceiling with the other two guys as far as the offense
is really the key.
Offense, age, skill set. I like Nico, but you're not going to see him as doing jet sweeps out of the backfield or running as a big slot. It's just not. It's not in his game, So I think that there is more versatility with the other guys, and I think that it's going to equal more fantasy points ultimately. Zane, you were in on Nico right before we had this conversation. Does this change anything? Or are you still big on Nico for this year?
No, I still think he's going to have a good season. I'm happy that they got Kayshon Boutte because I think that allows Nico to not just be like the big deep threat guy, because that's what Kayshon Boutte can bring. So it allows Nico Collins to still be more of like a 3-level threat because they didn't have anybody else that was going to do that just based on the way that they were going to play. Like I know we all, or at least I like Jalen Noel, but they don't seem to want to have him as an outside receiver. They seem to want to put him as a slot receiver. He wasn't going to be on the field as much as most people want him to be on the field, and he's the only other one that was left in that room that could have done some of the vertical kind of X wide receiver, deep threat type of stuff, right? So the fact that they got Kayshon Boutte to me helps like leave him in a more like diverse route tree, which I think is big for him. So I was happy that they made that addition. I agree that they probably won't throw the ball nearly as much as when they had Jaden Higgins in the plans and everything too. And I don't think the plan was to really throw the ball a ton this year anyway. Play defense, run the ball. Like that's where they got David Montgomery. The problem with me on this is like I still think he's so good, like a really good football player. And so
yeah, me too. Yeah.
And I actually think that he is the best one of the three in terms of like right now talent. And so I just wish that, like, in some situations, I just wish that he was like with a better quarterback situation, whatever. But sometimes, like, the good players, they're still able to get the like 11 to 1200 yards. And I know with Burden and Zay, we're just kind of sitting here like, yeah, but wouldn't it be nice like if their quarterback was really good and then they ascended and they got 1500 yards? Like that's the type of stuff that we're thinking through. And I obviously don't see that with Nico Collins because the situation's not going to let that happen.
Yeah, I think that we can see an MVP type of season from either Lamar Jackson or maybe even Caleb Williams if everything falls right. CJ Stroud is not sniffing an MVP season.
Maybe Will Anderson.
You know, it's like the chances go, you know, Lamar to Caleb to CJ. It's just like drastic. And when you're talking about the
I do get a
differences.
little bit worried with Zay when it comes to like the touchdown stuff. I think that there's some real aspect to it just with like the size. And the good thing with Luther Burden is that he has the size, even though he plays like a small quote unquote receiver because he does a lot of the yak underneath stuff. It's like he's still 6 foot 210.
But I think Rome and especially Loveland will out target him in the red zone.
In the red zone. Yeah. I mean, I think it's likely the case, but I can at least see a situation where, you know, if they do put him in that Amon-Ra role, Amon-Ra scores a ton.
He gets a lot of red
zone.
zone.
And that's it. And when you're a yak guy like Amon-Ra and Burden, who are yak guys, you don't need to be in the red zone to score. You know, there are situations where you're 20, 30 yards out and you're in the end zone. So I don't know if that's, you know, how we have to really just like look at Burden and say, you know, this is exactly how he's going to get his touchdowns. He can get it in a couple different ways, honestly. But
I think I'm breaking the tie with him being 22. And like, that's just, you know, he's 22 versus 25 versus 27. I'm going to break the tie with that age.
All right, man. Well, let's, I'm going right back to you, man, because we got a few more over here, but this is the battle of previous wide receiver 2 on teams. And obviously 2 of them have changed situations and, you know, obviously Devonta's still on the same team with Jalen Waddle with the Broncos. There's a lot of, I think it was pretty easy like 2 or 3 years ago. I think T. Higgins was still like, everyone wanted a piece of T. Higgins, but things have shifted, you know, and it's a fun thing to revisit right here. So we're going Jalen Waddle, Devonta Smith, or T. Higgins. And this is a fun one for this year and for Dynasty as well.
I mean, I've been pretty adamantly flag planting Jalen Waddle. The hard part with him, though, is like he does have a true injury history that I think is real and like could carry forward too. If things break right for him, I think that this season could be a major blow up for him. But there is like that downside situation with the injury and stuff too. The problem with me for Devonta is I've never been a huge Jalen Hurts guy. We saw some of his production dip last year. Obviously, the situation itself with the offensive coordinator, the offensive line getting injured. It's just a weird season for the team overall, even though they still made the playoffs and everything. I don't know that I would say that it's going to get to that point again, but I always think about like the available amount of yards that the team has from a passing perspective, right? And so for me, it's like Jalen Hurts last year was at like 2,300 or so. I can't remember off the top of my head, just close to that. And then 2 years ago, 3,800. 3 years ago, 3,800-ish. So like that's kind of the range that you're probably going to see. And I think it'll probably be less than the 3,800 because you've lost like the elite AJ Brown. I'm like, okay, available pass yards. Let's just say he gets to 3,600. It's so hard to like quote unquote break fantasy with a quarterback that's not going to throw for close to like 4,000 yards. And so that's like the cap that I put on Devonta Smith. Is he going to have like a consistently productive season, 1,200 yards? He kind of reminds me of Chris Olave in some ways, where it's like he's going to do well. Like there's no question to me that he's going to do well. But I really like Jalen Waddle, and I think that his fit with Bo Nix and what that offense likes to do with some of the underneath stuff will fit him very well. his separation metrics against man coverage, against zone coverage, all sorts of stuff, like very strong all around. I like the fact that he's going to be in this like more elevated role where he's going to be the number one. We saw it for a small stretch last year when the offense was completely broken, where he was the number one when Tyreek went down and he had some big weeks, and then he gets kind of hurt. Tua gets banged up, the offensive line gets banged up, and the whole thing just kind of like fell apart. But I can see it. Like, I don't love Bo Nix either. I'll just say that. But the way that I see this is, and we've seen it in the past too, and I'm not going to compare him directly to Diggs or to AJ Brown, but like we've seen these situations play out where this guy comes in on his like second contract situation almost, moves teams, goes to a quarterback that's like in like an ascending career position, which I would consider Bo Nix going into that situation. And then like the whole offense gets elevated off of that situation where you add like a dynamic player, which I think Jalen Waddle is. And then we see Bo Nix do better. The receiver themselves gets better. And it's just like this whole situation where the offense just flows really nicely now that you have this like cornerstone that you can trust. But the downside is obviously the injury component. So I just see like his situation being one where over the next couple of years, I can very much see him be like a very dominant alpha. But I do recognize like there's clearly a bigger floor with his injury history. And, you know, what if Bo Nix doesn't actually get that much better or whatever you want to say?
Chris, how are you feeling about this tier right here? We're talking Jalen Waddle, Devonta Smith, T. Higgins.
Well, I want to get to some of these other ones, so I'm going to be real quick with these ones. I like it Waddle, Devonta, T. Higgins, and it's because Waddle and Devonta are now the alphas on their teams. Waddle, I like the offensive environment with Denver better than the Eagles for sure. And then I'll take Devonta over Higgins just because he's the alpha. Now, as far as injuries go, all three of these guys can get hurt. You know what I mean? Like they've all sustained some kind of injuries. And Devonta maybe not as much as the other two, but how much do we really trust, you know, the Slim Reaper to get 150 targets this year and stay healthy 17 weeks? Like, I just don't know that I trust him to be getting just insane volume for a whole season, right? You know, it just, I know I've been drafting him decently high. I've definitely taken him over T. Higgins this off season, but you know, recently I've just been thinking about it. I'm like, man, can this guy really get 1,300 yards and 10 plus touchdowns? Is he gonna be able to hold up to that kind of pounding? Like, I just don't know. And Waddle, kind of the same thing, but Waddle's in a better offensive environment. You gotta bet on that. Like, Denver's gonna throw the ball 150 more times than Philly at least, right? So just do the math. Sometimes that's what it comes down to, and that's where it scares me. Like, if there's a major injury to Jamar Chase, like Higgins will probably beat Devonta Smith then. But for me right now, I'll go Waddle, Devonta, and Higgins.
Yeah, I'm going to disagree on this, boys. I'm going to go Devonta Smith over Waddle. I know that you can point at Jalen Hurts. I think, you know, a lot of that is Jalen Hurts. I think a lot of that is the offensive play calling. And I think that we're going to see at least a career year from Devonta Smith. And I think that you can say that about Jalen Waddle too. But I cannot trust Jalen Waddle for the life of me. And I want to so bad. And I cannot ever put an injury prone tag on any player and feel good about it. But if I'm going to do it with anybody, it's Jalen Waddle. And I just, it is personal. Actually, I'm going to say it is personal because I've owned a lot of Jalen Waddle. I have screamed from the rooftops when, you know, coming out of college that he was somebody that I need to get. And I think that he's going to have a very good year. I just cannot for the life of me tap him above a Devonta Smith. And I think that, you know, I'm pointing over here and my cameras keeps following me around. I just think that we're going to see Devonta Smith get peppered with targets. And I know that his role didn't necessarily move you in that offense, but I think Mekhi Lemon is going to slide in, and I think Devonta Smith is going to be expanded as far as his route tree goes and everything that he's doing for this offense. You know what? I do like Bo Nix a lot more than I like Jalen Hurts, and I think that there are going to be similar as far as production goes, but I think that Devonta Smith's going to play more games, and I'm just going to go off of that, and that's how I'm going to leave it. I'm just going to say, hey, I trust Devonta Smith staying healthy longer and throughout a season more than I trust Jalen Waddle. Not good analysis, not really much there, but I got to go with that. I'm sorry. And with that, we're going to go to the next tier. So we're going to go right to you, Chris. We're talking A.J. Brown, Garrett Wilson, Rashee Rice.
Ooh.
So we're talking A.J. Brown, Garrett Wilson, Rashee Rice. All
right. So dynasty-wise, I have been talking about Garrett Wilson very down on Wilson, just because unfortunately he's on the Jets, and I take offensive environments heavily into consideration when I'm drafting players, when I'm looking at, potential war for these players, like what is their true ceilings, right? And Garrett Wilson, for me, unfortunately, like his ceiling at touchdowns is like 5 or 6, you know what I mean? Whereas you take A.J. Brown or Rashee Rice here, both of them could score double-digit touchdowns. So I know that seems very simplified and dumbed down, but it's the truth. And so it's very hard for me to tap a Garrett Wilson over an A.J. Brown or Rashee Rice, either of them, even though he's what's Garrett Wilson, 25 years old? A.J. Brown's 3 or 4 years older than him, right? But, I like to play to win, and so I'm still going to draft A.J. Brown or Rashee Rice over Garrett Wilson. And if it comes down to A.J. Brown or Rashee Rice, I'm going A.J. Brown just because, like, Rashee Rice, I mean, look, the man's going to find a way to make catches this year. I don't know that the Chiefs give him another contract after this year. And so who knows what happens to him and what his future entails, right? I know that A.J. Brown's got Drake May for at least the next couple of seasons. I trust that very much. I like the way that Drake May has developed as a quarterback. I think that that's just, super safe. I mean, look at what A.J. Brown has done. He helped elevate the way that Jalen Hurts, his numbers looked throwing the ball. Look, what can he do with Drake May, right? I mean, Drake May is easily the best passer that A.J. Brown's had. I'm going A.J. Brown, Rashee Rice, then Garrett Wilson.
Zane, where do you stand? Oh, go ahead, brother.
No, I was just going to say, so from a dynasty angle, I have to have Garrett Wilson first in this situation. I think, like, Rashee Rice, his situation is just so it feels manufactured. So it's like one of those things where maybe I win something this year between those. Like, in redraft leagues, Rashee Rice and A.J. Brown go above Garrett Wilson. And I think that makes sense, right? Just given, like, exactly what you said, where this year I think you would easily want the offensive environments that you're going to get from A.J. Brown and Rashee Rice. But with Rashee, like, I think his situation is so manufactured that I don't know if he's going to be on this team that long, right? And so from a dynasty angle, like, I get very, like, concerned about that. Obviously, there's the legal stuff that has happened. The knee, we don't know exactly how he's going to look coming off of that. But, for this year, like, I'll agree that I think that Rashee Rice will probably have a better season than Garrett Wilson. And then with A.J. Brown, it's also like a matter of time. We just don't know how long that knee will last, and how long he'll be able to function as a strong NFL player beyond maybe this season. And so that's like the other, like, dynasty concern. Whereas Garrett Wilson, it's one of those. It's a hard question to answer because it's one of those things where it's like when you win with Garrett Wilson, it might be 3 years from now, right? Because it's like They got Geno now, and next year they may have a rookie. And usually with rookies, you're not having like a big season.
And how old is he
it's
then?
like, yeah, and then it's the year after that. And then he's 28 or something, right? Like,
right.
You're just sitting there like. But
I mean, Garrett Wilson is this. Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but Garrett Wilson is the equivalent to a DJ Moore, equivalent to a Terry McLaurin. You know, like where. Yeah. You are looking at so many different quarterbacks, and I can't count between the two of them how many quarterbacks they've had over their careers, and they did finally get a quarterback, and that was age 27, you know? So
yeah,
go ahead, Zain.
I do think for like this season, we obviously saw the worst out of Geno last year. It was quite literally like one of the worst blocking offensive lines in like pass blocking offensive lines that we've seen in a long time. And he's a player that needs like a clean pocket in order to operate, which I mean, obviously all quarterbacks do, but for him especially, like he's just terrible without decent blocking. He doesn't get the ball out quick or anything. This year, the Jets are kind of like a middle of the pack offensive line, which isn't great, but it's also a lot better than what he had last year. So I think he can like direct the ship enough that if you get that Garrett Wilson, like, last year he was at like a 35% target share or something like that when he was playing. If you get some crazy stuff like that from this season, there is the possibility that something happens, but you need Geno to be like adequate, not a stud, but adequate. And the odds of that are just a lot lower. So for this year, yeah, I'm going to go AJ Brown, then Rashee Rice, Garrett Wilson. From a dynasty angle, I'm still going to lean in on Garrett Wilson and have it Garrett Wilson. And then I'm going to go with AJ Brown and then Rashee Rice. I am very low on Rashee Rice because of I don't know that he's going to be on this team beyond now, basically. And then I don't know that I truly trust him beyond this exact situation that he's in.
I'm pretty much lockstep with you guys. I think, AJ Brown this year feels like he could be a 1,312 touchdown guy, and that could actually repeat itself. I think for 2 years, AJ Brown will likely double the amount of fantasy points that these guys get. And I think that's not a knock on Garrett Wilson, his play style, the way that he is. He's one of my favorite players. He is just in this situation that, he is the DJ Moore. He is the Terry McLaurin. He is a very good wide receiver stuck in a very bad position. And adding Sadiq and Cooper and everybody to that offense doesn't make it any better. And I think even when he was the only guy there, he was scratching 1,000 yards. And he might scratch 1,000 yards this year, but I think AJ Brown is going to, just outproduce him. And I just like the 2-year window. But in Dynasty, you're right. I think that you might still have to go Garrett Wilson. But I think what we have to all agree on is that Rashee Rice has been a fraud when it comes to his usage, the way that they play him, the manufactured touches, the fact that, he has been really the only viable wide receiver with somebody like Xavier Worthy on the outside, banged up, not assimilating to the NFL the way they wanted to. Rashee Rice has been the safety blanket alongside Kelsey. And I think that once if Cyrus Allen becomes an actual guy and he becomes a good wide receiver, I think we're going to see some Rashee Rice erasure. And we're going to see an offense that doesn't have to manufacture touches and run through Rashee Rice to get, to be an extension of the run game. Kenneth Walker adds a lot to this, the screens and everything that Rice was getting all his money on might not exist because Kenneth Walker is actually a good running back, and they haven't had one for quite a while. They've been relying on Pacheco, Plotting, and Kareem Hunt, and all these guys that are on the couch right now, essentially, that, we're finally seeing a good running back and somebody that can be that pass catcher in the backfield. We have an Emmett Johnson, who is an excellent pass catcher. I think they're going to see a different offense. AJ Brown feels set and forget it. Garrett Wilson feels like he's in the darkness. He's in the cave with Zain over there, man. He's out there.
Okay.
I don't know. Yeah. honestly, with the black shirt, it looks like your head's floating every once in a while. It's awesome.
That's what I like to do. I like to wear
Yeah.
this black shirt with the black background because I
I
want
like
people to
it.
think that I'm like the dude
You,
from Power Rangers. That's like just
oh, I was thinking Olmec. Is that what he's from? Is he from? I don't know. I'm aging myself out. There was a show. Yeah, we'll talk about it at backstage. We're gonna take the airtime right now. I think we're in agreement. We're agreement in here, and I think that we might agree on this next tier pretty easily, given the fact that this guy has been lighting the offseason on fire. I'm gonna go over to you. We've already had some chop wood, carry water comments, and we just started the pod, but I think that that's really where people are at with this guy right now. So we're talking Parker Washington, Jameson Williams, and Roma Dunze. So Dunze is back here right now, and people are a little sour on him. And I don't know if that's for good reason or if it's because Luther Burden is just so loved within the Dynasty community. But, he has fallen pretty far back ADP wise for the Bears pass catchers. So it's Parker Washington's just risen up. And we're talking about Jameson Williams, who is Jameson Williams. And a lot of people kind of view him as maybe taking another step forward this year. But where do you stand, Zane, on these three guys? Parker Washington, Jameson Williams, Roma Dunze.
And this is for Dynasty. I think this is like super, super tough because it really depends on if you think that a lot of these situations depend on what you think of the other receivers on the team. So like for me, if you think that Brian Thomas is going to be like this all-star stud, you probably are low on Parker Washington. And then with Roma Dunze, it's the same situation with with Luther Burden. If you think Luther Burden, which I think we all just kind of talked about, like we think he's going to be pretty good. If you think he's really good, you might be lower on Roma Dunze because it all comes back to like, okay, the quarterback situation. Are they going to be able to support like really strong seasons? When I say strong, like can Roma Dunze have a 1,200-yard season this year if Luther Burden also has a 1,200-yard season? I don't think that's possible because of Colston Loveland also, right? So like you start splitting the pie and it just doesn't get to that like level. So you have to kind of have your horse that you're going to pick between like the weapons that are on the team. And then for me, like Jameson Williams is just not going to get to that level because they have too many pass catching options between their big four with Amon-Ra and then Jahmyr Gibbs and Sam Laporta. So it's like really hard when you start like peeling it back to know like I hate having a guy like Jameson Williams in fantasy because I just don't know when to play him a lot of times. Because the offense is going to go through Amon-Ra St. Brown, and then that Gibbs is going to get his points, and then it's like, who's the other guy that's going to do stuff between Laporta and Jameson Williams? And I just don't know most of the time. But for Roma Dunze, I do think he's going to end up being third in targets because of his role, and it doesn't have to do with his talent. Like I think he's such a good football player. There's a reason why Caleb can't hit him, and it's because he does the intermediate and deep work for the offense, and Caleb's just not a really accurate football like thrower. And the farther the ball goes down the field, it's harder to be accurate. But then his accuracy is like a big tick below most quarterbacks when it comes to being further down the field. So I get worried about Rome when it comes to that. Again, think he's really talented, but I think he's probably going to end up being like third in targets. And the role that he plays, usually it's very similar to Jameson Williams, where it's like you kind of need to be able to have like big plays to make that happen. The big thing with JMO is that he has a quarterback that's like pinpoint accurate, so it helps. Like he's going to get the ball and it's going to be there, and he's going to be able to catch it and do something with it, where that doesn't happen as often with a Rome situation. And then Parker Washington for me, I'm actually a believer. I don't know I've never paid attention to what you guys have said about this, so I have no idea if you're going to be like out of left field and be on the Brian Thomas bandwagon, or if you're going to be on the Parker Washington bandwagon. I said this about Luther Burden earlier, where like there's going to be offensive continuity. We're certain on that because Liam Cohen has the job that he has, and he's the guy that runs the ship, right? So I'm happy about that because I know that he will like be the long term like coach and involved in the offense and all sorts of stuff. We've seen his slot role in the past be fruitful for fantasy, specifically in 2024 with Chris Godwin. Am I saying that he's as good as Chris Godwin was in 2024? And I think it's hard when people like try to parse that situation and be like, well, you think of Chris Godwin and you're like, I don't know that he was that good, but 2 years ago, he was actually that good. It's just like now we think about him as the guy that's had ankle surgeries and isn't as good as he was, right? And older. Um, but he was number 2 in fantasy points before he got injured. And then he got injured, which was like kind of halfway through the season. And things had to change and all sorts of stuff beyond that. And he didn't come back that season. I do think Parker Washington's in that situation. He's a better yak player. So Godwin's more of like a route running technician, where he was able to like get open separation, all sorts of stuff. And I'd say Parker is more of a like built like a running back yak type of dude that you can get the ball underneath, and he can like cook and break tackles and do stuff like that, which is why he's been their punt returner in the past. And I don't know that he's going to have that role. The other thing that I'll say is I do think that he'll be on the field most of the time based off of what I've read and heard. And I think that's the hard part with the Jags receivers is like what rotation are they going to do? 2 wide receiver sets, like who's going to be on the field? And I believe that I believe that Parker Washington will be on the field in those situations. And it might be Brian Thomas on the field with him. It might be Jacoby Myers. I don't know. But it's going to be, I think Parker Washington will be the one that is on the field. So I like his role. I think he'll be out the team long term, the quarterback too. So it's just like the continuity situation, I think is positive for him.
Well, click here.
Oh, I'm muted. I was like, Chris, I don't know how your dog's doing back there, but
I muted it to shut her up for a minute there. But yeah, if I'm going to go
talking about Parker Washington, they were like, no.
No,
I mean, you're going to be surprised by us, I think, for the most part. But
so, all right, this is a fun one because we've got 3 really good offenses here in the Jags, Lions, and Bears, and so I like all of the quarterbacks here. Caleb is the one that would scare me the most, and so the problem they all have one little red flag. Parker Washington's only red flag to me is his contract. Like, where is he going to play next year? If they hammer him with targets this season, that doesn't necessarily mean that he's the guy next year as well. He could get 125 or more targets this year, easily out target the others, and have that Godwin role as you were talking about, Zane. But again, we don't know where he's going next. He could be like, he could go somewhere like the Panthers or the Texans. You know what I'm saying? Like, we don't know. And so that scares me a little, even though I'm totally in. I've been drafting a ton of him, but that's because his price is cheaper than the other 2. You know what I mean? So are we talking price versus price when we're talking these guys? Because if we're talking straight up price, I'll take Parker Washington over these 2 guys because I know I can get them around. I can get Parker a round or 2 later. Right now, you might have to pay more because he's gotten so much hype, and people are really seeing what happens with this offense. I mean, you look at the last half of last season and the playoff game. Parker Washington easily is going to outscore these 2. Jameson Williams, I think, will outscore Rome Odunze, but long term, even though he is signed through 2029, I just think that dynasty wise, I'd have Rome Odunze like ranked just a hair ahead of him because there is still that part of me that sees the window that Rome could outscore Burden any of these years. Okay. I know that Burden is the more versatile guy, but I also see Rome as the better red zone guy, right? So there's the possibility that Rome gets like 11 or 12 touchdowns and Burden only 6, right? So, but Burden gets 1,100 yards and Rome gets 975, and so they're still very similar points at the end of the season, right? Jameson Williams, I think, just for me and my rosters that have him, I think that the ups and downs of Jameson Williams is overrated. I just know for the teams that I have him, he's in my lineup. If you draft Jameson Williams, you should roster construct properly so that you're not deciding every week, do I start him or don't I start? The guy finished 12th in points. Like, how much higher does he have to finish for you to plug him into your lineup? When he has a big week, you're very likely going to win that week. When he scores only 5, well, there's other receivers that score only 4 or 5 points in a given week too. That's where I'm saying it's just drastically overrated from my perspective, at least. And on the teams that I have him, it hasn't hurt me as much as I think people think so. So for me, dynasty wise, I'm still going to go Parker Washington, JMO, Rome. It's too hard for me to rank. I'm going to go with the one I like the best right now.
When I look at a year 2 Liam Cohen offense, I want a part of that. I want a piece of that.
Yes. This offense is too fun to not have part of.
He is a great offensive minded coach. And I think that he develops these players, and he pretty much everything in the offseason tells me that they have this trust. And then there's this little circle with Cohen, T-Law, and Parker Washington. And I feel like they have a group chat and they talk to each other, and they're just like having fun, man. They're talking about what they're watching on Netflix.
With Liam Cohen, where he was like,
texting him, like
texting
him, like I'm gonna run through a wall or whatever, and like he
texted him, which I think is that means something.
I agree.
We've all been in relationships in our life, or like with friends or whoever, and it's like who texts who first, and that means something sometimes.
I agree. I just think there is too much of that going on in this offseason not to take it seriously. I think that you looked at the usage last year and everyone wants to say, is it real? Is it fake? I think that what you're seeing in the offseason confirms that it was real. There was a 30% target share. There was high usage. His red zone efficiency is incredible. All of that sticks with T-Law. I think that T-Law saw what this offense could be with a Parker Washington that is absolutely efficient, that makes him better, that makes him look good, that makes the offense look good. I think that there's so much there. I can't not take Parker Washington here. I can't not say Parker Washington is going to outproduce Jameson Williams and Rome Odunze. When you look at this, and I have a type, I do. When I'm looking at similar tiered guys, like I did in the first tier, or I think second tier, whatever it was, where we were talking about Zay Flowers, Burden, and Nico Collins, Rome Odunze and Jameson Williams fit the Nico Collins mold a lot more than Parker Washington does. Parker Washington's closer with Zay Flowers, a Burden, where you can line him up everywhere. He's going to be the main slot guy. He's going to be inside, outside. He's going to be the primary end zone target. Honestly, I don't know where Strange is going. I don't really know the consistency of this rotation. But like Zain says, we know that he's going to be on the field. We know that he's going to be in end zone or red zone packages. He's just going to net more points. He's just going to be in a Liam Cohen offense year 2 more than any other player on this team. I think that he's going to have a higher snap share than Brian Thomas Jr., than Jacoby Myers. Travis Hunter we don't have to say anything. We know that's true. It is what it is. Give me Brian Thomas Jr. all day over Jameson Williams, Rome Odunze. I got to tell you.
You're taking BTJ over the other two as well?
I'm too fired up.
BTJ would be a good matchup with JMO and Rome. Now that you've started talking about it. Yeah.
I think that if I was going to put Brian Thomas Jr. in this range right here, I would probably still take Jameson Williams first. And that's, he is a boom bust, but I want the Lions boom bust over the Jaguars boom bust. I want this. God, I got to stop using my hands, man. I got to either turn off this tracking on my – I got to do something. We got to change this up. I'm too handsy, man. I think that I'm taking – that's a good question, though. Zain, would you take Brian Thomas Jr. or Rome Odunze in in a startup?
One, I think that Rome is a better player, like straight up. But I think that Brian Thomas at least has a better chance, in my opinion, to be a number one in his offense. If things don't work out for Parker, I'm buying the Parker Washington thing, but I still think that there's a better chance that he would be the number one in his situation than Rome, because I still think like Loveland presents a really strong threat in that situation. So I would go with Brian Thomas. It's very close. But my order was very simple. So it was Parker Washington, JMO, and then Rome. Anyway, but yeah, I would probably have BTJ like right above Rome for this year specifically. I think that Rome will have a better like stat line at the end of the year than Brian Thomas, but I'm willing to admit like that there is a chance that Brian Thomas reverts back to like rookie year, something happens really positively for him and whatnot.
Love it, man. We got one more. I don't remember, who did I start with last time? I was starting with Zain, right? So Chris, this is a fun one because I got a couple of your guys in here, and I sandwiched this. I didn't time this or situate it in a manner that you were going to get this guy, but you're going to get him anyway. So I love it. We're talking Josh Downs, Quentin Johnston, or Matthew Golden.
All right, so this one's actually pretty easy for me. I love two of the guys, and I very much dislike the other. And so I'm in the middle of a 16-man draft, as I mentioned at the very beginning, and I was very disappointed when Quentin Johnston got drafted, and then Josh Downs still fell to me, and I was able to get him. And Matthew Golden went before both of those two guys, and I was super happy. So yeah, I'm going to rank them: Quentin Johnston, Josh Downs, and then Matthew Golden. It's really between Quentin Johnston and Josh Downs for me. Matthew Golden is just not on my draft boards. Okay, I don't want the fourth option on a low volume pass attack that the Packers are. That's just, it doesn't make any sense. Okay, I don't care that he's lining up as the second wide receiver in two wide receiver sets. Jaden Reed's still going to get more opportunities. Okay, it's really that. So Matthew Golden's out of the mix. Quentin Johnston versus Josh Downs. If Keenan Allen was not there, I think it'd be closer. But Keenan Allen just ruins the ceiling for Josh Downs, but he doesn't ruin the player, Josh Downs. Okay, if that makes sense. I still think that Josh Downs can have his career year this season. Okay. To date, he could be better next year then, but to date, this still could be Josh Downs' best season. I think that Keenan Allen was brought into town because Alec Pierce is banged up. And so we'll see what Keenan Allen really does. I just don't know that Keenan Allen, is he really like going to keep producing like Larry Fitzgerald did into his mid-30s? I don't know. I mean, at some point, Father Time does catch up with these guys. I mean, we see what's happening to Mike Evans just in this preseason. Are they going to wheel him out there week one? I don't know. But Keenan Allen, he missed all of training camp, probably for a good reason. I just think that I'm going to take Quentin Johnston, the high upside, the big playability. I love it in a high-powered Chargers offense. Give me that over what the Colts have, even though they were high-powered last season for the first half of the year. I don't know. I don't trust Daniel Jones can replicate that. I'll put it that way. So I'm leaning Quentin Johnston, Josh Downs, Matthew Golden in all formats.
Keenan Allen might fit the mold of like what they do in the NBA when they get a vet over there. They like a mid-level vet. You don't have to go to practice. They don't have to go to any walkthroughs or anything. They just show up for the games, and then they're like, "All right, we'll see you. We'll see you when we see you. We'll come back for the next game."
That's exactly what he did.
Who's the dude from the Heat? The power forward from the Heat, Haslam.
Haslam's like a player coach.
Keenan Allen.
Yeah.
Yes.
Adonis Zain, how do you feel about this tier?
Very easy to me to have Josh Downs number one. Like no question to me on that one. I think he's going to play in two wide receiver sets. And I think it's like Keenan Allen still impacts him because when he's on the field, he's going to command more targets than like Ashton Doolin would have, right? But I don't think that they're going to be in 3 wide receiver sets that often. This team usually likes to be in 2 tight end, 2 wide receiver sets, a little bit more than like, standard like 11 personnel teams that are like just going at it with 3 wide receivers always. They like to have their like blocking tight end in, which is helpful for downs if he's in the game, which he has historically not been, but I think he will be this year because they've been trying to have him do that in practice this entire time. They've been talking about it all summer about him doing that. Shane Steichen specifically even said it. So I feel pretty bullish about that situation playing out nicely for him. I think he's the best like overall talent of these guys too. He doesn't have a contract for next year, which I think is important in the context of he could go to a better situation, he could go to a worse situation. We don't know. A worse situation would be, hey, they deploy him again as like a slot only player with a bad quarterback. Like if he, again, we'll use the Panthers as an example. And if he was like a slot only player for the Panthers, that would be pretty bad. But there's also the positive side where I think the cost right now isn't too expensive. And there's a possibility that he lands in a really favorable situation where a team accentuates his talents. I think of him somewhat similar to Zay Flowers. Like he's not as good as him, but he could be deployed very similarly to how Zay Flowers has been deployed. Also a good like separator. And if he lands in a situation like that where a team uses him the right way, I think that could be really strong for him long term. Again, best talent, so I would like to invest in that. Quentin Johnston, I'm pretty sure he's also on a contract season. You guys can correct me on that.
I believe that he's got
real quick. I got contracts up here.
Yeah, I think he's like I think they like accepted his 5th year or whatever it is.
Yeah,
so
they did.
So there's still like question marks, right? Like if his season doesn't go well, then he could go somewhere else. And I would think that going somewhere else isn't going to be better for him.
His club option is next year. They already
so he's got 1 more year with the team. Okay. Well, so that helps a little bit, but I am not a like long-term Quentin Johnston believer. I think he's kind of that he could be like one of those guys that's in like a more like favorable environment with a better quarterback, that the likelihood of him being with a better quarterback or being in a better situation than what he's been in is lower. So I have Josh Downs a little bit higher than him. I actually think that Josh Downs will outproduce him this year. I know that might be questionable between you and I, but that's what I feel so far. And then Josh Downs will be better. Golden's just, to me, like the lowest man on the totem pole pretty easily on this one too. Don't believe in the talent. I do think that there's some situation where he has this bounce back that kind of reminds me of Quentin Johnston, to be quite honest, where it's like, yeah, year 1 was terrible. He didn't even play that much sometimes, and he just didn't look great. But then year 2, things click a little bit more. And then it like we see this like 800-yard season, which isn't going to win you a fantasy league by any means, but like, you can get that stock boost maybe out of that situation because his stock is like probably super low right now.
Yeah.
So that's I think he's like bottom of it.
Right?
What'd you say?
Just think about all right, you're an analytics guy. You looked into his analytics being it's all red up and down for Matthew Golden. And I'm not necessarily an analytics guy. I like to lean on it a little bit, but even when you're like the top wide receiver in a Green Bay offense, you're capped at like 800 yards with Jordan Love, right? Like you're like everyone gets like
Watson can do more than that if he stays healthy.
I think that everyone gets like 600 to 800 yards in that offense. I think there's like 5 guys.
Like, there's a lot of changes that could possibly be happening this year for that offense, and that's the one thing that I'm leaning on for Christian Watson and Jaden Reed. I think they're going to do more 3 wide receiver sets. They've talked about playing faster too, and with playing faster, they don't want to rotate receivers as much. It's funny because Matt LaFleur had this interview that he did with Jordan Rodriguez, and he was talking about how he would like call plays, and he didn't realize that the receiver that he was calling the play for, because they would rotate them so often, wasn't in the game anymore, and he's like frustrated with that situation. So what they decided to do was like let 2 of these guys go so they could just like focus on having these 3 guys be like the focal points. I think we're going to see higher like route shares from these guys this year. In the preseason, they played faster too, which, it's preseason data with a small sample size, so it could just be variance, but it does match what they've said, which is like they want to play with more tempo. And they're playing like at a pace where you would see maybe like 2 or 3 extra plays per game, which is nice for fantasy. So there's like a couple of like upside things that are like steering the ship in that direction at least. But again, I most of the time like to bet on talent, and I just don't think that Golden is anything special.
So do you think they're finally going to stop trying to draw the other team off sides every down? Like
Yeah,
that started with Roger, and it's just the most annoying thing. Like I have to watch a lot of Packers games, and it's like, come on, guys, just snap the ball.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. I
do think they'll play faster. I think they'll throw a little bit more and have more plays and rotate less, which is all strong for fantasy. But I think that all of that points to me to, hey, I should be drafting Christian Watson and Jaden Reed.
Yeah, I want Jaden Reed everywhere when it comes to guys in that.
Yeah,
offense.
I laugh when
I want a piece of
Golden goes over Reed. I just don't.
I want if I'm looking at an offense like that, I want the guy that is the cheapest as far as a outlook goes. But I will quickly answer this, and then we'll get into a wide receiver hot take, and then let's skedaddle, boys. But I'm with it. I want Downs. I've been a Downs guy. He was definitely somebody that I was a lot higher on than consensus. I thought he went lower in the draft than I thought he should have. But, I just think that we're going to finally see the usage that we've been waiting for 3 years, 4 years, whatever it is, that we're going to see him at least see the field consistently. And I think that's the only thing that's been the hang up for Josh Downs, because when he's on the field, he's efficient. He is definitely somebody that separates, gets the targets. There's a roadblock. And I think that the quarterback play and everything really has just hindered his early career, momentum. And I think that with Pittman gone, with Daniel Jones healthy and consistent, we're just going to see somebody that blossoms and has that career year that you mentioned, Chris. I think that we're going to see at least a guy that hits 900 yards this year and, maybe 6 to 7 touchdowns. And I think that that's a reasonable ceiling for him, but I think he could get over that. And, I think that's probably the cap that I see Quentin Johnston have. But when we're talking about a dynasty perspective and a lens, it's Josh Downs handedly, because I really don't know. Like we mentioned, McDaniel's kind of going for an audition right now. I don't really, I want to buy into everybody in that offense, but I can't just say I'm going to put all my eggs in the basket of the Chargers and I'm going to believe that all of these guys are going to cook. I have to take a guy, believe in him, move it on. I don't want, Ladd McConkey, Quentin Johnston, and Omarion Hampton this year. I can't do it. I can't put myself there. But
one quick stat here. One quick QJ stat.
Don't do this, man.
one of 5 players with 8 or more touchdowns the last 2 seasons.
That's what he is, man. I know that's exactly what he's capable of.
He's can't predict touchdowns. I know they're volatile, right? But
how much is he paying you? I'm just kidding.
I know.
All right.
Anyway, I mean, I wanted on the show sheet, I said, let's hit a hot topic. Let's just go real quick. Let's end it with like a hot take for this year, just this year. Chris, if you mention Quentin Johnston for a hot take, I'm muting your mic, man. But I'll lead, and I will say that George Pickens outproduces CeeDee Lamb this year. And that is where I've been at almost this whole offseason. But I just think that if you're going to get a piece of this offense, I'm waiting on George Pickens, because I think that there is a very real possibility that Pickens gives you more fantasy points this year than CeeDee Lamb. And I could do a whole pod on this, but for brevity's sake, I'm going to leave you with that. Chris, give me a hot take.
Casey Concepcion, top rookie wide receiver this year. Boom. That's it. I mean,
I like
Browns,
it.
Browns offense is going to be bad enough. They're going to be slinging it enough. I don't care who's the quarterback. And I don't care that Harold Fannon's there because I think Fannon can still produce what he did last season. And there's enough left on the bone for Casey Concepcion to outscore. Probably Carnell Tate would be his closest competition right now, with everybody else falling, dead in the water with Makai Lemon.
Makai Lemon's fully healthy now. And we're looking at him at least showing some life right now.
True.
Zain, you're over there rubbing your temple, I think, or something's going on over there, man.
There's too many for me to choose from because there's certain players that I'm like very out on for specific reasons. And like, I feel bad about this rookie class because I feel like Makai Lemon landed in a terrible spot for him. I feel like Carnell Tate landed in a terrible spot for him. And then Jordan Tyson's hurt. So like when I'm thinking about this Casey Concepcion thing that you just mentioned, I'm
it's okay for him. It's ugly. It's ugly, right? I talk about offensive environments all the time. It's ugly there in Cleveland, but he doesn't need to get more than 4 touchdowns to still lead this class in points. Like he could.
Well, who was the quarterback for Malik Neighbors during his rookie year? Was it Jameson Williams? Jameson? No, Winston and Dart wasn't there yet, right?
Jameis Winston is like a fantasy.
I know he is.
He is. He is.
He is somebody
if
that
Jameis was the quarterback for the Browns, I would be buying like all their pieces right now.
What was it when he was with the Bucks?
That's where he got the 5,000-yard season. It was
was that it with the Bucks, or where was he at with Bunkin? He was with the Bucks,
30-30 year.
Yeah, so that was incredible.
For me, what I think I'm going to do is like spit off multiple that I think are fun. And some of them will be for this year. Some of them will be dynasty takes long term. And I'll just like talk about them for like a few seconds, not too long. For this year, I think that there's 2 receivers that I think will do better than guys that are going above them that are on the same team. I think Pickens is one of them, but I'm going to leave that one out because you already mentioned it. I think Wan'Dale Robinson will probably outproduce Carnell Tate this season. Receiving yards, targets, receptions, all of it. I just think like the offense will be oriented more towards this like short, like PPR scam, like type of situation for Wan'Dale, just given the offensive line situation. So that's one. That's not exciting for Dynasty because I know more people are going to want Carnell Tate than Wan'Dale, and I agree that it makes sense. 2, for this year, also not as exciting for Dynasty. I think Diggs will outproduce Terry McLaurin.
Honestly, that's spicy. I like that. I see the vision.
Yeah,
I don't like it, but I see
anywhere. That guy can get open anywhere.
I still think Diggs is a better football player than Terry McLaurin. I think people want to believe in McLaurin like taking steps forward, and he's had opportunities too, and he like obviously had some sort of ascension 2 years ago. He's also coming off injury, also getting quote unquote older, not as old as Diggs, but Diggs metrics from last year, it's like no drop off, and it was the year after an ACL tear. So I'm actually very bullish on Diggs this year. If you're like a dynasty manager that's trying to win this year, I bet you could probably get him for decently cheap because people are waiting for the drop off to happen, right? And then the dynasty one that I have is I would be buying shares of Ryan Flournoy if he's out there, because I don't think this Cowboys team is going to keep both CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens longer than this season. I'm a Cowboys fan, so I'm like very deep in the weeds on this, very very bought in on what they're trying to do. And I just don't think the team wants to have 2 expensive receivers. And I think Ryan Flournoy is actually a really strong talent who could ascend a lot. And so I would be buying low from a dynasty perspective. I don't know how low his value is like at this exact moment because I have all the shares. But if there's ways to throw out like pretty cheap picks and whatnot, like I would be doing that because I think he'll ascend to option 2 in this offense, which is huge for fantasy, in my opinion. Like a 1,000-yard receiver for a guy that like, you could probably just throw out some cheap picks and whatnot to maybe get. Let's see. I would be buying.
Sorry, I don't want to interrupt you. I'm sorry, but did you watch our show? You probably didn't see our show last week. We had a probably a 25-minute conversation about Flournoy last week.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I'm not exaggerating. We talked in nauseum, and we had another
It was the dumpster diving
we had
show.
another
So it
Cowboys
was all
fan
about
on.
multiple thirds
So
for somebody or whatever.
I will clip that and I'll send it to you because we just talked Flournoy, and it felt like too long, but maybe it wasn't long enough, man. Sorry, go ahead, Zain.
No, if we're talking like rookies too, like, so there's a couple other dudes that I think are interesting. Like, I would probably be selling Jacoby Lane right now. He's gotten all the hype,
Yep.
and I think that it's like it might be better than his situation might end up being long term. Like, Zay Flowers is going to clearly be the wide receiver one on this team for a while. And so, like, right now, people are getting excited, very excited about Jacoby Lane. I'd probably be looking to sell him because I think maybe when the dust settles, and we see this sometimes where like they drafted Elijah Surratt and they drafted Jacoby Lane. I actually still like Surratt better. Now the team may not feel that way right now, but I think like potentially in a year or 2 years, you may see him ascend above Jacoby Lane also. So I feel like it's a good time to potentially sell him. And then the last one is I don't know right now how cheap Chris Bell is because he's probably going to play. But if I was on this show like 2 weeks ago and I told you that, I had heard that he was going to play starting week 1, I think his stock would have been a little bit lower, but that's one that I would also buy. I think this offense is obviously going to be pretty terrible this year. But I think there's opportunities for in the near future for them to get better. For us to see him ascend to be a wide receiver one for this team, and just like build that stock up, right? And then that's what you're looking to do in Dynasty, like potentially build that stock up and then maybe sell it at a different point or whatever. So that's another one that I would be buying right now.
Yeah, I like that call out. I'm a big believer in buying in bad situations, and sometimes it's absolutely blew up in my face. I don't tell. I'm not going to tell my listeners that it's going to work 100% of the time, but buying in a Chris Bell and then waiting for a quarterback to come in can absolutely make a lot of sense when it comes to dynasty value because you can buy in. You don't even have to have a quarterback come in and play well. Just the idea of getting a new quarterback already boosts his stock by twofold. The fact that if they get somebody like Archie Manning coming in next year, you don't even have to see Chris Bell with him. All of a sudden, Chris Bell's worth the first because they're going to say, hey, he flashed with Malik Willis last year. I'm all in on this guy. And then the offseason, everyone's buying Chris Bell. Boom. All of a sudden, you don't have to see him. You don't have to see him on the field. And maybe he does kill it. But, you're already getting quadruple, you know what I mean? Like 5 times, 10 times, 20 times the value that you traded the 4th round pick for him or whatever you got him for in the offseason the first year. So, Zain, I appreciate you, brother. I appreciate everything that you shared tonight. I appreciate everything you're doing on the timeline. If you're not following Zain over there, Zain, tell everybody what you're doing for content, what you have coming up, what you've dropped. You're on every podcast and on demand. Tell them where you're going, when you're going to the moon. I don't know what you're doing next.
So interesting thing. I'm going to be on Locked On Cowboys Monday, which is an awesome opportunity for me because I've followed the team since I was a kid and grew up there. I don't live there anymore, but I'm going to be on Locked On Cowboys on Monday, which is super exciting for me. I do the Fantasy Football is Life show with Fantasy Life. That's my home where most of my content is. I also have my own YouTube channel called The Cut Up, where you can watch me. I go through all my news and notes. I also review film and show like why Carnell Tate's going to be bad this season, things like that. Why Dejon Stribling looked pretty good on tape. And then, you can catch all my content and rankings and all sorts of stuff at Fantasy Life. I usually do redraft stuff. Like that's where most of my, that's what I've been oriented to do. But I do have a lot of strong opinions from a Dynasty angle. I play Dynasty too. So if you guys have questions on it, feel free to reach out. I'm very accessible too. I try to be as open as possible with like DMs, chats, all sorts of stuff. Obviously, as you guys could maybe assume, with my account kind of blowing up a little bit more, my response time is slower, but ask your Nerdboi here. Like I feel like we chatted and it was like a quick yes. And there we go. So
that's it, baby. Shoot your shot. Zain and I, we've interacted a little bit on the timeline, but never really spoken DMs, and boom, shot it. I said, will you be my Valentine? And he accepted, and here we are, man. So it was good. Chris, you just dropped the video too, and I want you to plug that before we get out of here.
Yeah, this morning we dropped our training camp battles week 5, our Dynasty trade show. So we hit up some Dynasty trades from my Patreon that had relevance to the ups and downs, the hype of this offseason. A couple of Jacoby Lane trades in there, so you can see how some of the hype there played into it, as well as a lot of veterans that have gotten good hype, bad hype, whatever. We talked all those values in there, and I had Steve Stump on with me there, who I think you were just on with, Zain.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It was an awesome show. We did fun. Like a sleeper draft together. It was fun.
Yes. So we'll have that, and then next Monday night we will have Mock Draft Monday 30.0. We made it to the big 3-0. It's been a lot of fun. We'll probably hit up another redraft one just because it's that season right now.
Hell yeah. Well, once again, Zain, I appreciate you. That's Zain Dhanani Zain, I think is your Twitter name. So if you're not following him at Dhanani Zain, go do that, man. Because obviously, like we talked about, all fire content. He's cooking. He hit the ground running, man. And there's so much good stuff coming from him on the Twitter sphere. So definitely give him a follow. Follow us. Check us out on the new channel. If you aren't, go over to YouTube at Dynatize FF. So come follow us and check out all the new content we're coming out with. We appreciate you guys, and we'll catch you next week. Peace.